Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of This Week in Cloud Computing. Mark's going to laugh at me right now, but this is Amanda's finger dance.
Well, I think it's one louder. It's episode 11, isn't it now?
11.
Yeah, Spinal Tap joke, but...
Yes, Spinal Tap. Well, actually, it's This Week in Cloud Computing where it's okay to have your head in the clouds. I'm the queen of cheese.
Oh, my goodness.
I can't help it.
Moving right along.
Mark Jeffrey, my co-host, everyone.
Thank you.
Did everyone catch This Week in Venture Capital right before our show?
That was a great show.
We're stealing Mark's Huster.
We'll get him on the show. Yeah,
we will, because Mark actually has a great background in cloud computing. He used to work at Salesforce.
Yes.
So we will be stealing you, Mark Huster.
Yes.
Another quick thing, I love how-tos, you know, just very big into Lifehacker, for instance. It's another one of my favorite sites.
You know, Mahalo has a lot of how-tos. Funny you should bring that up.
Mahalo does have a lot of how-tos.
Yeah, just thought I'd say that.
But this particular how-to is important because it's from Adam Pash, from the editor-in-chief of Lifehacker, and he's giving the lowdown on how to move your business to cloud computing. So it was a special he did for PC World that was picked up by the Washington Post, I think, and so there's a link that we can throw in the chat room that I think would just be useful for people if you're looking at generally.
So just generally. So
yeah, just
I would imagine it'd
generally.
be very different for a lot of companies, though.
Yeah.
You know, what the details involved that are, but I will take
It was interesting to see, you know, a broad scale, you know, more, you know, general consumer.
Yeah, I guess there's some things that are
article
pretty
for
similar
cloud
across the board as well. So
exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
So there's that. Event updates. We've had so many cloud computing events going on recently. So Interop started on Sunday. They just announced the Best of Interop winners with Information Week Analytics. And the cloud computing winner is IBM for Smart Business Development and Test on the IBM Cloud. So if you want to see the full list of winners, we will put that link in the chat room, and it will be available on the website for cloud computing as well after the show. And Always On did their Premiere on Demand conference last week.
Yep.
And so the big winner for Company of the Year for that was Aperio.
Aperio, yep.
They're a cloud solution provider that offers products and professional services that help enterprises accelerate the adoption of cloud technologies. Accelerate.
Okay.
Let's see how fast they can do that. But maybe we'll have them on a future episode.
There's a lot of people in this space. There's a lot of people doing things that sound.
Lot.
The more I read about things.
Lots of buzzwords.
Well, I mean, just the more it sounds like, you know, we basically will accelerate your, you know, you into the cloud, and everyone's got a different.
We
take
will
on it.
propel you into the cloud.
It's interesting. There's going to be a shakeout. I mean,
maybe we do a show just on buzzwords, and we can only speak in buzzwords.
Don't we do that every week? No,
I know.
So,
but anyway, there's a list of those winners that will be in the chat room and online as well. Lieberman Software is hosting their webinar tomorrow.
Lieberman Software. Yes, we had Mr. Lieberman on here a few shows ago.
Phil Lieberman, and so tomorrow at 11 o'clock Pacific time. So there's the registration link. We'll throw that up. And then Cloud Expo Europe, we mentioned before, their call for presentations is due on April 30th. So that is, what, in 2 days?
Yeah, it's coming up.
So if you want to get in the middle of that, then make sure you register and also submit for Cloud Expo Europe. So those are main updates. And we also have some guests, I believe. They're virtual,
I hope so.
but we do have some guests. So joining us today, we have Duncan Johnson-Watt with CloudSoft joining us on the phone. And we also have Aaron Levie of Box.net, who will be showing us the app of the week. So we will jump ahead there in a second. But first, I think we've got some news.
We got some news.
We have something else before news, too.
Yeah, we want to mention our sponsors.
Yeah, we've got these things called sponsors.
Sure wouldn't be possible without them. They're really awesome. This Week in Cloud Computing is brought to you by Verticore, Storm on Demand. I'll be singing a little song, as I always do every week. To Verticore. Yep. NetDNA, and their respective Twitter handles are at Verticore, at Storm on Demand, and at NetDNA CDN. Yes. So please thank our sponsors.
Yeah. Especially given that they've stuck with us. You know, here we are, episode 11.
They have, I know. It's been great. And they jumped right in the beginning, too.
Yeah.
So it's not only that they stuck with us, they jumped in rather fast.
Exactly.
So hats off to all of you guys.
Cloud computing was important.
Yep.
So news. Lots of big news stories this week for cloud computing.
Yep.
Starting off, Oracle's kind of slapping Microsoft on the wrist a little bit, almost like a tax.
Yeah.
You know, they're charging for the open document format for Microsoft Office.
Okay. So let's explain what that
plugin.
is. So Oracle bought Sun.
Yeah.
Sun created the open document format, and so you know, and it was free. It's been free up until now.
Yeah, Sun was nice. They let people have it for free.
Now it's not open source.
No.
So
just open document.
some people are saying, oh, this is a terrible move by Sun because you know it was open source. It's not open source.
No.
It's a commercial product. It just happened to be free.
Yeah.
So Oracle is now charging for ODF, for the ODF plugin for Microsoft products. And the more I read about this, the more it seemed like Oracle was basically taking advantage of the fact that people need to upgrade from the older version of Office 2003 to 2007, and they're unwilling to. And so this is sort of a nice stopgap measure.
People still have 2003?
I do on one of my machines at home too, yeah.
I know people who do too.
So there's no reason for me to upgrade. It works fine.
True.
To be honest with you, so. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, the question is kind of, a few different sides of it. Is this going to help ODF sales? And also, how's it going to, will it help or hurt smaller businesses specifically? That's what I'm concerned about. So,
let's go to our guests.
Duncan, what do you think? Can you hear us?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. So the open document format, Oracle is now charging for it for Microsoft Office for their plugins. So is that going to help the sales of open document format? And
I guess at adoption probably.
Yeah, the adoption of it.
Or will it hurt it?
Yeah.
I think that's. I mean, it's very hard for me to comment on really Oracle's overall strategy here. But I think it's a little bit of a sneaky thing to actually come up along. I mean, basically, it's one of the issues you have with a lot of these plugins and so on is that you're given stuff free to begin with as a teaser.
Yeah.
And then it's actually, I think, important if you actually step away from just looking at Oracle and looking also at, if I want to relate this to my own sort of area of expertise, cloud computing, what is going to be the actual end game in terms of what we're going to pay for things. And I think it's actually kind of hard to know that, and it's also very hard to get out of people, detailed long-term pricing for services that are currently many times in beta. So I think I would relate it to the broader issue of how do we charge for and how do we develop new business models, which are in many ways one of the most critical aspects of cloud itself, along with the technology.
Very nice. I have to comment also, Duncan, just on your wonderful image that we have that we keep throwing up, because Duncan obviously is not from New York City, if you can't tell, folks. He lives in Edinburgh and he's visiting New York City, so, got a little bit of skyscrapers in the clouds behind you there, Duncan.
Thank you. Yes, that's very kind. Yes, I'm a volcanically displaced person. I've been here this is the third week of my 1-week trip out.
Oh, my goodness. Well, glad to have you. Aaron, what are your thoughts on charging for the ODF plugin?
Hey, how you doing? So I have not had enough time to think about this, but I think that at a high level, as it relates to Open Office and the future of that software suite, I think that the more support, the better, probably for that package. And so, if it makes sense to charge for it and really create a business out of it and making it a meaningful revenue stream, I think that will be useful, because I think that there is a lot of room for Open Office and the open document format and sort of the whole whole ecosystem in general to certainly improve. And I think that having business models around that will actually, create the proper incentive to have competitive development on improving the standard and improving some of the formats that are out there. So ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing. I assume that there's still going to be open source licenses that allow developers and people to build on this stuff in very serious ways. And I expect that this is more of a move for Oracle to have a commercial version that they can support for enterprise customers, but that's again not knowing too much about the specifics right now.
Yeah, no, I mean I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you, because your upgrade path is either go from you have Office 2003 right now,
right,
to this open Office plugin, or a more modern version of Microsoft Office.
Exactly.
Either way, you're going to be paying, so it's not like in any other case. So to be honest with you, I think it's fine.
Yeah. And it's actually good business practice to charge for
amazing,
products,
I know.
Right? Wow,
incredible. Not
imagine
everything's
that.
free.
Imagine that, folks. Wow.
Yeah.
Story number 2. So another previous guest of This Week in Cloud Computing, Ellen Rubin of CloudSwitch, she attended the Cloud Computing Expo last week, another show that occurred last week, and she said, at first glance, cloud computing can appear to be virtualization taken to its logical conclusion. And she mentions a recent Gartner study noting that cloud computing is the #2 priority for CIOs, trumped only by virtualization.
Right.
So, let's throw this out there. Do you guys agree? I mean, is cloud computing, is virtualization taken to its logical conclusion? Sure. So, Duncan, what do you think?
Well, I think, you also have to be careful here because Gartner also said at the beginning of this year that in terms of strategic initiatives, cloud computing should be the #1 focus for a CIO. So I think, whether their day job is consumed with trying to deal with implementing virtualization or not, I don't know. But I actually think cloud has actually trumped virtualization already in terms of developing, as an enterprise, a strategy around cloud, and not just around cloud as infrastructure, but also around how to develop software for the cloud. In terms of your actual question, which I guess I should try and answer, I'm not really, I don't really see it as the end game. I mean, people that know me will know that I love the whole sort of story of the moon program, the NASA sort of space program. And if you look at something like a Saturn V rocket, which is probably amongst the most, if not the most complex piece of machinery ever built, it was built in stages. And so you could actually, I think, argue that the first stage, which really is what got it off the launch pad, could be argued as virtualization. Yeah. The second stage, which actually gets you pretty far out through into the upper atmosphere, is actually infrastructure as a service. And then really the third stage, which is, I think, really starting to heat up now, is what actually puts you into orbit. And ultimately, if you're on and I hate to be geeky here, if you're on
be geeky, it's wonderful,
mission,
Duncan.
then that's what you use to actually launch you into space. So I think, think of platform as a service as being really the third stage. And obviously there's been an announcement, huge announcement this week, only yesterday, around platform from Salesforce and VMware. I think of it as 3 stages in a rocket, all of which are necessary, but certainly I would disagree with the statement that virtualization is somehow the logical conclusion or the end game. Think of it as more of the first stage.
Excellent. So would you say part of this is a lexicon thing? Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard this, my thought was, in both cases, you're virtualizing your infrastructure. It's just a question of whether you do it or somebody else does it, and you pay them for that as a product. Now, there's more to it than virtualization, as Duncan is saying.
Right.
But I do think, and he's basically making the argument that these happen in stages. Virtualization is the first stage of the rocket. He's right. But I do think in both cases it is virtualization, and so therefore it's just a question of where it occurs. Exactly. That's what I see as the main difference.
Exactly.
Well, I guess you could argue it's the hydrogen fuel, maybe, if you want to get picky, which does feature throughout. But and I think we also need to be careful here that when we say virtualization, we don't trip over ourselves and accidentally mean just server virtualization. Okay. So clearly, one of the areas of interest for us is really virtualizing the application itself.
Right.
Sure.
That's a good point.
Sure. Aaron, any thoughts?
Well, I won't be able to compete with the space analogy at the moment, but
that was a good one, huh?
But if I may go aquatic right now, that could. No, I'm kidding. So I think not from a technical standpoint, but I think from a conceptual standpoint, the cloud really. I think that's what maybe the reference was in the quote in terms of at scale. If you kind of look at what virtualization is all about at scale, again, in principle, the cloud is meant to deliver on a very similar extended sort of vision of that is when you've been able to essentially virtualize all of your platforms and your software and your data center to the point where it's abstracted in a very real way from the actual hardware and software that you're maintaining. And so I think that's why that's why it's a fine I think reference, and I think but ultimately at the end of the day I think the platform of the service as sort of the final frontier is incredibly powerful. The VMforce concept makes a lot of sense. I think we'll probably over the next 3 years see hundreds of announcements just like that, where we see the different kinds of layers and stacks come together in a very virtualized cloud-oriented way.
I'm loving this. It's the show of analogies. We're going to have to post all of these online and make sure that we've got all these snippets for everybody after the show. Story number 3, because we keep touching upon this and hinting at it. Salesforce.com and VMware have officially announced VMforce, which we had covered very briefly on a previous show when it first, the words first got out there about it. So it's a joint product that will give the world's 6 million Java developers a new way to deploy applications in the cloud. There isn't any word yet on pricing, but it will be available in a developer preview later this year. And I'm assuming the closest competitor is going to be Microsoft's Azure.
Azure, and also Google has a platform as well.
Yeah.
I think it's Google Gears, if I'm mistaken, that's the name of it.
So, Duncan, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about this announcement. So, what are your thoughts on VMforce?
Well, I think there may be thousands of announcements like it downstream, but I think this is probably very significant, being the first of those, and also the fact that if you leave aside the fact that when I actually watched the webcast yesterday, obviously there are two different agendas here, but in a sense you need to part what each company is trying to do and look instead at the value that it brings, because companies are companies. They have reasons of motivation, some of which are clear, some of which are less clear, but the end result, as far as I'm concerned, is VMware have basically, in a sense, eaten their own baby. They basically realized that virtualization is only that first stage, and that really the only way they can actually maintain the momentum is, and obviously was to buy SpringSource, and then a much more modest but equally significant acquisition only last week, RabbitMQ, is this is all part and parcel of actually moving from infrastructure to the platform. And I do hope there will come a day when we'll stop talking about infrastructure and just focus on the value that the platform is providing, really in order to give people a highly productive, very natural, very sort of intuitive environment in which to develop applications, because we all tend to get kind of focused on what we do for a living, and it's always good to remember the end result of all this is meant to be a platform that provides people with a much more efficient delivery for applications themselves. So the one thing I've learned over the past 25 plus years is, application developers, and I would include myself in that, are really tourists when it comes to things like infrastructure. And we're probably best, kept in the tour bus, far away from the infrastructure. And in a sense, that's what this is setting out to do, but doing it in a very natural way and building on the Spring framework. Okay, there've been other things like this, but this is Java, which is, I think, hugely significant. It's also aimed fairly and squarely at the enterprise. So, cloud has had its fun, and it's had its sort of adolescent teenage years, and now it's getting serious, and now enterprises are getting very, very serious about this. And I think, looked at like that, it is a major step forward. And I think, making it accessible to enterprise, to the vast majority of developers, is a huge plus.
Yeah, I agree with Duncan. The story here is that it's Java specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's basically now the Java developers who had no path, no bridge to the cloud, if you will, now have a very large bridge. And it is aimed at the enterprise as opposed to goofing around with web stuff.
Exactly.
Which is sort of where I think in a lot of ways where it's been.
We're going to have another story in a minute about a path to the cloud. But before we do that, I want to throw this next question over to you, Aaron. This next story, another Salesforce story, actually. They've also acquired business contacts directory startup Jigsaw, kind of a Wikipedia of contacts, really. And Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff said, Salesforce.com is advancing the shift to what he's calling Cloud 2.
I was going to say Cloud 2. When did that happen?
Are we even through Cloud 1? I mean, he's saying Cloud 2. And he's saying where productivity gains are going to come from real-time collaboration available on any device. We've seen the future of enterprise software, and it looks more like Facebook on the iPad than Yahoo on the PC. So, Aaron, my question is, what are your thoughts on the enterprise cloud mimicking our favorite social solutions?
Sure. Well, we at Boxer are definitely big believers in that. It's funny that somehow Jigsaw would be the consequence of a quote like that, but I think they have a lot of different reasons why that investment might make a lot of sense in terms of strategic intentions that we don't know much about, or other sort of additional revenue streams or business models that matter to Salesforce. So I'm not sure if that directly is the quickest way to get to kind of Facebook for the enterprise, but ultimately this notion and paradigm shift wherein if you are working in an organization, it should be as easy to share information and knowledge and data and business intelligence as it is to share photos and content with your peers or friends. And so, so I think what we've seen is this massive, step function in communication that we've gotten in the consumer world, and now there's a lot of savvy businesses and enterprise software companies that are saying, well, the same thing kind of makes sense in the professional world. And so right now it's a bit of a race to see who can kind of develop the most flexible, the most usable, the most connected, the most feed-oriented business software possible. And so that's what a number of companies are doing. And I think in this process, we'll actually see some organizations be filtered out just because of their own ethos or ability to kind of produce these types of products, and a whole new category of software emerge. We like to think from Box.net. But you'll also see some awesome innovations from folks like Yammer or Jive Software, or some of the newer players in social business software. So yeah, ultimately we're massive believers that it's all about making information easier to share, information easier to consume, information easier to connect to other platforms, and again, all for the benefit of the customer.
Mm-hmm. And what a powerful thing for Salesforce to be able to include all of these contacts, most up-to-date contacts as well. So from a business perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I could hear my whistle. Echo, echo, echo. That was great.
That's pretty good.
Okay, moving right along. So we've got to get to some other stuff here. Story number 5, we have F5 Networks made a big splash at Interop on Monday. Mm-hmm. They announced an upgrade to its big IP line of application delivery controllers. The new version helps extend enterprise data center architecture to the cloud by letting technology departments employ on-demand IT through a dynamic services model. So the question is, it's meant to address the range of requirements that are put forth by businesses that base their networks on different mixes of virtualization. So will it be effective? Duncan, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Just a couple. I mean, I think at the heart, what they've done is provide really if you like, a set of blueprints. Sometimes they're called thumbprints that really give people a head start in terms of actually sort of managing large enterprise applications, for example. So there's been a lot of work done in this sort of arena for a while, trying to fingerprint applications and so on. And this is really applying that same idea and saying, instead of you having to reconfigure things from scratch all the time, you're being given a huge number of different templates that you can work from. And so these are infrastructure templates rather than pure application templates, the way we think of Chef or Puppet and manufacturing things like virtual images containing particular stacks. But I think it's a great idea. Whether it's the biggest idea this year or not is not for me to say. But I think it's making life easier, and it's all part of, I think, an initiative that's happening at all layers in the stack, where companies, whether they're F5, CloudSoft, many others, are all gearing up to try and make it easier for enterprises to make the most of cloud, whether they're doing it private or whether they're doing it with a trusted third party, or whether they're actually dipping their toes in a public cloud resource.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I mean, I think another point with this too is that businesses they do have different levels of virtualization that they're looking at. So I think that's key to this. I want to move right along since we are a little pressed for time. Going to this whole path to cloud computing, we also have a story from Red Hat this week. They've announced a new program that they've dubbed Red Hat Cloud Access that migrates enterprises that already have existing premium subscriptions to Amazon's EC2 cloud. So, existing subscribers, enterprise subscribers. Do you think that this is in response to Ubuntu's cloud strategy, Mark?
Yeah, I would say that there's probably
because they're stepping up their cloud strategy.
Yeah, it does feel like a
competitor action going on there.
So I would say yes. I think they're being forced in this direction. It's probably not something they would naturally do, but like everyone else, they're getting swept along. So yes.
Okay. And do you think existing subscribers are going to take advantage?
It depends on what they're using it for. I mean, there are definitely instances where the cloud makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
So as we've discussed, ad nauseum on the show.
Exactly.
So I think a significant portion of them will at least look at it. So.
Well, I think it's high time that we thank some sponsors, and I don't think it's raining in LA today, but it is cloudy.
It feels a little bit stormy.
Feels a little bit stormy.
It does feel stormy, as a matter of
here.
fact, yes. I have my storm, my flagon. This is my coffee flagon. Storm on Demand. Storm on Demand is an infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform, and actually I should put it up here so you can see it. There you go. Which is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. It's a proprietary cloud platform that was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. It is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon's EC2. Some features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing, and little guys with kung fu grip and bionic eyes. There we go. Show 11, we have 2 guys. Yeah. So options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. Storm on Demand can be found at stormondemand.com. Storm on Demand.
Episode
You may
11.
do your own heroic voice if you wish as well.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's jump into a discussion with you, Duncan. So, Duncan Johnson-Watt.
How do I follow that?
Well, you could put on a cape and fly through New York for us, and we could put that on screen. We do have Iron Man coming out soon, and there are a few of us that are very excited about that, but that's a separate show. So, Duncan Johnson-Watt, you're the founder and CEO of CloudSoft, serial entrepreneur and industry visionary with over 20 years of experience in the software industry. That's a lot of time. A lot of time.
Yeah, a lot of scars.
A lot of scars, I'm sure. So prior to founding CloudSoft, you were the CTO of Enigmatic, an enterprise data center automation company that you founded in 2001. That must have been a tough time to found a company, given that things were not doing so well then.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well,
What
we
a
all
good
know
time to do it.
what happened in September that year, and obviously prior to 9/11, there was also the problem with the dot-com sort of bubble bursting, and those two events, for very different reasons, obviously impacted people. One was financial, the other was, I think, deeply traumatic. So, you know, as a result, it was an extremely odd time to be talking about anything, let alone starting a business. I mean, I think people went numb for many months, but nevertheless, I mean, we all pick ourselves up and carry on. And I was very, very happy to actually raise funding in order to sort of start Enigmatic, and that funding was actually raised in the UK with a VC called Amadeus Capital Partners. And very interesting. I mean, 2 things I learned very quickly. One is, I wouldn't say don't do this, but in general, there's no point posting a business plan on a website with a VC. I think you've got to have an introduction, and I was fortunate to have a good introduction to Ann Glover and Herman Hauser that run that fund between them. And the other thing is, it's fascinating the way these guys think. If they like an idea and they like the team, then, I think this is true now, just as it was then, you will be able to raise money. It's as simple as that. So they loved the idea. We then spent 7 years pioneering several ideas, not actually the one we first pitched, I think it's bad. Learned a lot. I think if I was German, I would have been given a German doctorate, which I think takes about the same amount of time, 7 years or thereabouts. And, of course, I was watching a podcast trying to mug up on F5 before this show, and lo and behold, the CTO of F5 is saying, and the hot new thing at Interop this year is orchestration and automation. I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have started my company a little later on in that case, because, but he also made the point, which I think is a fair one, that space is now really dominated by larger players, and so Enigmatic, along with all the independents in that space, have largely been gobbled up now. I think because things like orchestration and automation are big-ticket items. They're very complex to do, and they tend to belong in a suite of management tools rather than existing on their own. So, the vision of being the next Tivoli, sadly, didn't come to pass, but in the course of doing that, I hit upon some fantastic IP that I ran as a skunkworks for 5 years, and then was fortunate to be able to spin out and really form the basis of CloudSoft.
I was going to say, I thought that part of Enigmatic really became CloudSoft.
Yeah, okay. I think that's right. And we had really two distinct technology sort of drivers inside the company. One was focused on really the automation and orchestration of infrastructure, and the other, which is now CloudSoft, was really operating at the application or middleware tier. And we used the one to showcase or demonstrate the other for many years. So what CloudSoft now has, which we call Monterey, our Monterey middleware, was used to demonstrate to skeptics that, yes, you can actually do real-time infrastructure. You can actually manage a complex application and have policies guide the resources it's using and when it's using those resources and so forth. And it's not just wishful thinking. And without getting onto too many hobby horses at once, although I probably will in the course of this conversation,
perfectly fine.
I'm a big fan of showing people how to do something and how they might do something versus just telling them, and death by 100 PowerPoint slides. So I think, whether it was using this technology to demonstrate the value of what we were doing or now, building reference solutions to show people what we mean by application mobility, I think, a common theme is show people what you're doing, give them a chance to actually sort of touch it, feel it, get used to it.
Very fair point. Well, I think that's a good way to market yourself, too.
It is,
by showing rather than just telling.
Yes.
Another thing I wanted to raise, because this is quite impressive, you're also a Computer World Smithsonian laureate for your pioneering work introducing Java Enterprise to financial services. So how on earth does one become a Computer World Smithsonian laureate?
You're nominated, and I was fortunate to be nominated for some of the work I did, really as a early adopter of Java Enterprise technologies, which I was part of a Reuters group company called Instanet and built out what was then the largest EJB implementation in the world that ran a brokerage system. Now, obviously, people will now point out to me that was a pretty dumb thing to do, but I didn't know any better. Nobody knew any better. We now know lots more, but it was deemed sufficiently interesting and marketable, because don't forget, marketing plays a role in all of these things, lest we forget that I was nominated by Scott McNealy for this, and I genuinely did go to Washington, and I did stand on the mall as the band played, and I actually had my phone on, and I had this so that people back home could hear it, and got a medal. However, it was only a little medal for, and I do have to point out it was the last century, so it's pretty much out of date by now.
Oh, come on now.
That was
last millennium.
Now, but
the last millennium,
fun.
I know.
It was fun. I mean, I think, these things are a bit of fun, to be honest with you.
Of course. Well, why don't you share a little bit more about Monterey and exactly what your goals are with it, short-term, long-term. I know you've got some great partners like Citrix. Just, tell us a little bit more about what your strategy is with it.
Fine, sure, I'd love to. So really, I mean, we're a middleware company. So middleware has a long and I would argue distinguished tradition of really leading the way in many verticals, financial services being just one of those. But as a middleware company, it's notoriously difficult to demonstrate middleware. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but it's kind of tough, basically.
It is tough.
Very.
I mean, people stare into space as you try and do this, unless you actually can really show people what it means to build an app up using this kind of technology. So we've got two things running side by side. We're obviously developing a product that's our Monterey middleware, but we've spent a lot of time and worked with some really high-quality partners to build out, an exemplar, if you will, of what we think an enterprise-class cloud platform should look like. And that's, from the ground up. So, along the way, doing that, we discovered some pretty interesting stuff going on out there and case in point, and the real reason why we're working with Citrix on this is they had done some fantastic work with Solarflare, who are a 10 gig NIC specialist, making sure that a guest virtual machine could see all of that beautiful bandwidth. So you've got 10 gig E on the back plane, but and in the fabric, but can you actually see that? And that may sound like well, of course you can. Well, actually, no, of course you can't, because there are bottlenecks and whatnot.
Right.
And by the way, harking back to Java, a lot of people threw me out at the door for ever suggesting that Java would ever be mainstream or run production systems. Cloud and virtualization clearly will, and it's just a matter of time.
Right.
But one of the things that you need to do is solve particular technical problems. And so Citrix and Solarflare have solved one, and hence they're great partners for us, because they allow us to leverage that when we actually get up into the application stack. So think of it as, the goal is to demonstrate the value, ultimately, from my point of view, my agenda of application mobility and the importance of doing things the right way with the right quality of components. But it's also about showcasing, the skills and the abilities of others as well. So, I think it's a collaborative model. It's worked well for me in the past. I'm sharing the stage at Citrix Synergy with Bruce Tolley, who's the VP of Marketing at Solarflare, who's done some fantastic work, as I say, with the Zen guys. And there's an interesting little piece of, this is gossip or just sort of sidebar, really, but one of the interesting things about why they did this was a simple fact that the two companies, Citrix and Solarflare, had each acquired other companies in the past who just happened to work alongside each other in Cambridge, UK. So they literally solved this problem because they were, they were next to one another. I mean, it's old-fashioned collaboration, I realize, but it still works.
Face-to-face collaboration? What?
Sorry?
Never mind.
Yeah, I know, it's old school.
English,
sorry,
English, American English humor.
Or something, So,
so one quick thing then, Duncan, middleware, you say it's taking shape as a vital tool to fuel application mobility.
Sure.
So can you go into a little more detail on that specifically?
Right. Well, I'll try and keep it short, and I realize I do ramble on, so apologies. But essentially, what do we mean by application mobility? We really mean, technically, the ability to change some or all of the infrastructure an application is currently using, but, and this is obviously quite important, without the user or consumer of that application noticing and, in fact, hopefully benefiting from those changes, in point of fact. And that's a kind of, that's hard to pull off, and it's hard to make that invisible. But if you get it right, then it's very, very powerful, because then with that, if you like, technical capability or disposal, you can then actually use that from a business standpoint to optimize where things are running. And you can optimize for cost, you can optimize for performance, you can optimize for accessibility to other services, to data, to pools of liquidity, et cetera, et cetera. But the key thing is, once you've got that, it's a very powerful sort of tool in your sort of toolbox. And so that's the way I think of it. I think it should be as ubiquitous as virtualization, and not something that's pigeonholed for one or other use case, as people tend to think about these things. But clearly, its value will depend upon what you're trying to do with it.
Okay. I noticed that you have a new person on your advisory board, Sean Findlin. And he's a recognized financial services expert, also the founder and managing partner of West Avenue Capital. So what was the reasoning there? What's Sean going to bring to the table for you?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, he's somebody I trust, and he's somebody I've known for a number of years.
Well, that's very important, I would think.
I'm building up a sort of a group of advisors, and he's now he's the third we've announced, but we've actually got another one we've just signed up. And
we'll make sure that you let This Week in Cloud Computing know when you're ready.
Oh, I promise we will. And each brings different skill sets and experience. So Linda Bernardi, who may be known to some people, was CEO of a very successful RFID company a few years ago, Connectera, that was sold to BEA. She's now a very active investor and strategic thinker, and she actually contacted me way before CloudSoft, when we put out the announcement, the PR, about 18 months ago. And so I've been working with her since the beginning. Rich Miller joined us a little more recently. He's one of the recognized experts in networking and in messaging, and I think messaging and middleware in general has a huge role to play as the cloud moves forward. So delighted to have him on board. Sean, to answer the question, brings something a little closer to, I guess, the customer or consumer. He brings that sort of, if you like, light to shine on things. So basically, from my standpoint, he's been somebody I've worked with in the past. He's a good litmus test for what we're doing, and obviously in his new role, he sees a lot of technology and is involved not just with us, but with a number of other interesting firms. So I think it's good for him.
Sure. And then my final question really is, speaking of financial services, what's your response to people who say cloud computing is not well suited for high-performance applications like trading?
It's just time. It's a matter of time. It will come. I mean, and anybody that doesn't think it's coming is going to find themselves in the same situation as people who were, wedded to the idea of printing presses and didn't see digital printing and digital sort of publications or what you guys are doing. You know, I mean, that's the ultimate. You know, so I think, you know, I've been around the block on this. I mean, Java was never gonna, you know, Java over my dead body, all this kind of nonsense. You know,
Really?
I mean, Java? Did I hear 6 million Java developers?
Yeah,
Excuse
6
me.
million.
Hello. So, you know, I don't want to sound arrogant. I think you have to actually...
Oh, you're allowed.
Pardon?
You're allowed to sound arrogant these days with
well,
that number.
I don't want to sound crazy then. All right, so let's be arrogant but sort of rational, okay? So, I think it will take time. I don't think you can just assume it. I don't think you can sort of just you know, shout louder than the next person and people will take it seriously. I think you've got to, you know, show them the way. I was at a conference here in New York on Monday, which was looking at, you know, at the other end of the spectrum, looking at some very exotic technologies to just make things go super fast down in the hardware. And obviously, you know, guys doing FPGA programming are not actually planning to do this in the cloud anytime soon. But that, to me, is just an endpoint. What's far more important is, you know, looking at how the enterprise or enterprises as a whole are going to sort of evolve over time. And I love the segment you did on Facebook and collaboration tools. And the simple reason that they're going to become the mainstream is because that's the idiom that my kids, you know, are growing up with. I mean, that's the way they think about the world. And so it's the same with technology. I mean, you know, there is an inevitability about this, but that doesn't mean we can just, you know, bludgeon people into accepting it. We've got to actually do the work to make sure people understand you can deliver performance, you can deliver security, and you can deliver, you know, things like application mobility. And so the vision can, in fact, become a reality for a day-to-day kind of application.
Very fair
so
point.
The short answer is yes, but it won't be today or tomorrow.
So yes.
So yes. Well, thank you so much, Duncan. Everyone, if you want to follow Duncan on Twitter, it's at DuncanJW. And obviously, cloudsoft.com. But I think I hear music.
No, you don't hear
Beautiful music
You're
in the
about to
background.
hear
I
music.
will be hearing music in the background.
That's a different one.
That's what I mean. I'm hearing music. Ding, ding, ding.
Your cloud hosting provider letting you down. Take a look at managed private solutions from Verticore. A managed private cloud solution can easily replace your current IT infrastructure and eliminate IT pains. Avoid the cost and hassle of buying and maintaining IT equipment and software. Deliver 100% uptime to end users and configure and deploy competing resources in just minutes. Do you know how? With Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. With Verticore, your private cloud is hosted in an advanced and secure data center. It uses only best-in-class hardware and software and gives you access to scalable bandwidth. You guys want to sing with me?
Sing along, everyone. Come on, Aaron.
Verticore's team of experts, well, I don't know the words, monitor and maintain your private cloud 24/7 by 365. It's with Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. Ready? You gonna go with me? Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. Thank you. Verticore.com. Please use Verticore. We do, so you should too.
You've been practicing.
A little bit. Just a little bit. So to make sure we
I was going to say don't give up the day job, but then I realized that was your day job.
This is my day job. What are you talking about?
At Verticore, folks, make sure you check them out, and if you need to use them, give them a try.
That's right. That's right.
So now we have an app of the week. We have Aaron Levie.
Keep getting surprised by a package, I know.
I know. I'm getting surprised by our own screens.
I know.
But it's great. It looks really good job, guys. Good job. So we have Aaron Levie, co-founder and CEO of Box.net, joining us here on Skype video chat. And Aaron, your Twitter handle is @Levie, is that right? Levie?
Yep.
Make sure everybody is following Aaron. Now, Aaron, Box.net, so cloud-based content management and collaboration platform. And you're based on the premise that workplace collaboration should match the ease, scalability, and elasticity of consumer-facing Web 2.0 technologies. Whew, there, I got that out. I actually got that out.
You did well.
Is that from us?
What?
Is that one from us?
That one is from you. Yeah,
Yes.
I stole it. So you launched Box.net 5 years ago in your college dorm room, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Where'd you go to school?
I was actually down in LA at USC.
Oh, and then we lost you up north. Oh man.
Sorry, we'll get it back.
Yeah, we'll get him back. And then okay, so that was 5 years ago. In 2009, Box.net's enterprise revenue increased 535%. Let me say that again. 535%. So that makes you one of the fastest growing tech companies in Silicon Valley. How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, on the enterprise side of our business, that's absolutely the case, and it's super exciting because I think it validates, and we have a bunch of customer case studies and profiles on our website, but I think it validates just that the technology makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense in larger businesses, and that was our hypothesis, and it really I think it made some great. Some great headway and traction in 09.
Yeah, and you've got over 4 million people that are using Box.net now. I mean, how on earth did you amass that user base? I think one quick question. I mean, this isn't planned here, but I want to know. You started 5 years ago, and there are probably people watching this going, "How on earth did he do this?" I mean, what did you do at the beginning that you would say you did right?
Yeah, so. Looking back, the thing that we definitely did right was we went after we went out to solve a problem that we understood, we knew existed. It was a problem that my co-founder and I were running into in college around sharing data and sharing content between people and classes and family and colleagues, and we didn't have any good solutions at the time that were available that were working for our needs. So we developed Box.net to essentially solve that problem. And I think the reaction that we got was pretty overwhelmingly positive that everyone needed to be able to put their content online, and then we were able to take that core platform and core product and leverage it in a business context and in a business environment to help businesses essentially manage all of their critical business information online. And so the 4 million users have really come from really wide adoption of the technology. We have a freemium business model that enables people to sign up for the product for free. So naturally, it spreads very easily through organizations, through communities, through friend groups, and through through businesses. So that's just been essentially why it's worked out so well.
Mm-hmm. So are you telling me that you actually found a solution for a real world problem? Is that really what it was?
Yeah, no,
wow.
I think. So my question for Aaron is that there's been a lot of people who've tried this, right?
Exactly.
So there have been a lot. I mean, this is not like everybody knows this is a real world problem.
Yeah.
That we need a solution to it. That we need some product. What I still don't totally understand is why it was much like YouTube, right? There were like hundreds of companies doing video online, but YouTube zoomed out ahead of everyone.
Why did YouTube get ahead?
And Box.net seems to be sort of like the YouTube of the online storage business, right? So what is it that, do you even know yourself what the secret sauce is? Is it something that you feel you understand, or what do you think the reason is for your success?
Sure. Well, and keep in mind we still have a lot of great opportunity and challenges going ahead of us. So we're definitely not done. So I think that it's probably our dedication to the customer experience and the usability of the product, the sort of value that we're trying to drive. I'm not saying that other companies hadn't ever done that, but we have a particular focus towards creating the best possible product for our customers. And I think that we do that in a very sort of relentless and highly sort of metrics and scientific kind of way that maybe other organizations haven't. And I think it's sort of our attention to that level of detail, which is why we got into the market in the first place. We didn't start intending to create a really large business. We wanted to solve the problem with through technology, and And so in that process, I think we were able to come up with a product that really worked well for people in larger businesses. And if you look at traditional enterprise content management platforms, whether it's SharePoint or Documentum, they're usually aimed at IT administrators, and they're usually very complex and difficult to use. And again, our focus was really at the end user, the individual in the organization that needed to share content. And so I think that, again, that sort of very specific, narrow focus on the user has enabled us to grow pretty quickly.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
A lot of sense.
That does sound right to me. You have a pretty funny ad. I actually found the graphic you were telling me about beforehand. So if you want to go to my screen real quickly.
Yeah, can we pull up the billboard, the Box.net billboard, guys?
Yes.
I love this.
Yeah, so Box.net is like SharePoint, but without the servers, setup costs, manuals, downtime, firewall restrictions, migraines, permission issues, blah, 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 blah. A lot of bad things.
Blah, 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 blah.
It's pretty funny. It's a pretty good ad. So well done.
Yeah.
Well done
That actually leads into our question. So you just secured $15 million in Series C funding led by Scale Venture Partners. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
And I've heard that your goals are pretty bold. Your goals are, from what your PR people tell me anyway, are to unseat traditional enterprise software players like Microsoft and truly revolutionize how people collaborate in the enterprise. So, pretty bold. So how are you looking to really take on the likes of Microsoft?
Yeah. So, again, I think this probably ties back to the original question. I think that our unique distribution model and business model around delivering our product for free to people and organizations, and then again, as you need more functionality, more storage, more security, more control around permissions and users, that's when you pay us. And so because we get a lot of the distribution in an extremely efficient way, the product spreads naturally through organizations of all sizes. So we have a very large number of people in Fortune 500 companies. We have large enterprise deployments in some of these organizations, and obviously then a tremendous amount of traction in smaller and medium businesses that have traditionally been really underserved by traditional enterprise technology, enterprise software. So so SharePoint is certainly our biggest target because they kind of represent the sort of larger software player in the space, but for the most part, the space is actually fairly fragmented, and customers with 50 and 100 or 500 employees are actually using lots of different kinds of tools and technologies in their organization. And so we'd like to be able to offer them a really compelling, best of breed content management solution that they can implement, within 5 minutes. That they can help their organization manage and share information.
Mm-hmm. I think another point as it relates to SharePoint too is it's looking at IT control and then top-down management. And really what you're looking at is just the opposite, driving adoption from the bottom up.
Power to the people.
Yeah, I like that, power to the people.
It's a good way to look at it.
So a big question on that side then, a bigger picture question is, how do cloud platforms fundamentally change how people collaborate in the enterprise? Yeah.
So when we started Box, certainly we didn't think about the paradigms as whether it's cloud or SaaS. We basically really thought about what kind of technology would solve the problem that we were having. And again, if you look at the problem that we were having, it was sharing between different computers and with different people. And so fundamentally, moving our data to the cloud or to the web was the only way that could really solve that. We wanted to be able to get this data in a central place that could then let other people log in securely and share and access this information. And we think that kind of value proposition extends to a lot of collaborative processes, a lot of applications and software that deal with information sharing. So by moving some of these applications to the cloud instead of having them in your internal infrastructure, you get a lot of leverage out of all the different things that can connect to the cloud. Like one example is I have an iPad right here, and you can get to all of your Box content directly from your iPad, and that's something that is a very sort of cloud-specific type of use case and benefit. You aren't able to access your SharePoint from an iPad, right? Because you'd have to VPN through an internal network and access it through a browser, and that would be very difficult to do from one of these mobile devices. So with Box,
that's why this guy is winning. It's these little details,
exactly.
and there's like a zillion of them, but he's thought them through. This is why he's winning.
And we're very fortunate to have a bunch of people here that think about all these different kinds of use cases where traditionally as a business owner or person in an organization you wouldn't be able to get to your content or get to your information. So the idea is once you store data on Box, we want to let you extend that data to any platform or any service or any device that you're going to be needing that information from.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, who are some of your notable partners? Because
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some people that are going to say, I would love to partner with Box.net. So who would you like to link to the Box platform?
Yeah, so we work with a bunch of different software as a service companies, as well as traditional hardware vendors and technology suppliers. We have relationships with Dell, with NetSuite. We're integrated into Salesforce.com on their App Exchange. We work with LinkedIn and Intuit. So again, the way that we think about it is once you have your data in Box, you should be able to connect that into different places. And for instance, Google Apps, you can take in Google Docs from Google and be able to share them directly on Box.net with our collaborative permissions and our extra sort of meta information that we let users add around data. So again, we're taking this best-of-breed content management platform, letting you take in any kind of data, whether it's from the web or from your computer, and then extend that out to different devices, different platforms, different people in and outside your organization securely.
Sure. That leads kind of to this whole notion of data portability, and I know that you've talked extensively about that. You actually wrote a piece for Fortune magazine, and you said cloud services often lack complete data portability, obviously, and it says, while there are many useful APIs that let us mash up services together, there's a clear absence of simple and obvious ways for applications to communicate uniformly and move data back and forth. So how far are we from actually solving that problem, and how is Box.net working toward true data portability?
Yeah, great question. So, I think we're seeing a lot of this right now in the social sphere with things like the Open Graph and a lot of the things that Facebook does, which are considered more or less open and more or less beneficial to the developer community and consumers overall. But they're really pushing on this concept of some semantic uniformity around how information can be shared between applications and between software and between devices. And so I think the same thing will happen to enterprise software. The same thing will happen as well in specifically within content management. There's a really rich standard that's emerging right now that allows the different content management providers, whether it's Documentum or SharePoint or Alfresco or SpringCM or Box.net, to share data back and forth between these systems and let developers develop on top of these platforms and abstract some of the specific features and specific functionality that these vendors have from how they interact with the data. And so as sort of these platforms begin to mature and as we get more demand from customers about how these technology needs to be more uniform, that's when I think this will all come together, and so it'll be a bit of a push-pull in the market. But I think over a number of years there will be some standardization that we see. There'll be some sort of best of breed, best practices that emerge, and we'll be able to kind of go from there.
Great. Well, I think it's about high time that we do a little bit of a demo, don't you think?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hang on a
So
second.
we're going to log in here on this side for the WebEx.
Apologies, we're in a little trouble.
And Aaron, if you can do the same on your end, we'd love to just get a quick view of Box.net.
And
while we're getting,
yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, while we're getting ready for that, we obviously have iPads here in the studio, and we have a show dedicated to iPads.
Well, I don't have mine
Not
working
in here, but we have a
yes.
show dedicated to the iPads.
That's right.
So if you want to see another Box.net demo, then you should probably tune in to our This Week in iPad show tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
That's correct. Yep.
So This Week in iPad. And we'll pull up Box.net and show you how pretty it looks on the iPad, too.
So it says on my side it's waiting for the organizer to arrive, which I assume is you.
There we go. Are you
Is it
logging
showing
in
up?
there on your side, Aaron?
What's that?
It says we're waiting for the organizer to arrive, so we need you to join, too.
Yeah, that's always fun. It looks like we're showing our screen, but maybe that's not what's happening.
Yeah, I'm in GoToMeeting. I apologize. It's basically just waiting for. It says it's waiting for the organizer to arrive. So.
Okay, let's try this one more time then.
So as soon as you. I don't think it's me.
Gotta love technology. Let's see here.
Oh, so we're not even the same thing. So
Yeah.
Well, we can just pull
yeah,
up
it looks like we're not
Box.net,
even in
the
the
website.
same meeting at the moment. It looks like we might be in a different meeting than you guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up. Well, I'll tell you what.
Sure.
In the interest of time, why don't we just go to Box.net?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just go to Box.net. We'll pull that up on the screen, and we can take a peek. And then you can see Box.net on the iPad tomorrow. Here we go.
Yeah.
So anything you'd like us to highlight?
We won't need a demo, but...
Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry, what, Aaron?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it should be easy enough to use that we don't need a full demo, I hope. But
This is true. This is very true.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like us to highlight from the main page?
maybe the pricing section.
Yeah, I just clicked on the sign up. So basically, here's where the prices are. So there's a light version, which is for free. You get a gigabyte of web storage, 25 megabyte file size limit, and then it goes up to individual. Free 14-day trial, $9.95 a month after the trial. Goes up to 10 gigabytes and 1 gigabyte file size limits, and then business class, free 14-day trial again, $15 per user per month, so it's on a per seat basis, typical. 45 gigabytes of web storage and a 2 gigabyte file size limits, plus some other nice little, they got a Google Apps integration, task management, control and auditing, file insights and tracking, role-based permissioning, so basically an IT manager can control what's going on, and full text search. So nice, pretty cheap,
Great.
really cheap.
Great.
So.
Maybe that's why they have millions of users.
There you go.
So Box.net, and I think it's high time that we thank some sponsors again.
I think I'm
don't
feeling
you?
a storm coming on.
It's pretty stormy in here.
I feel my voice growing deeper and I'm becoming more heroic. I'm sitting up straighter and
Getting chilly.
my superpowers are returning.
I think I see
feel
lightning.
a storm on demand. Let's get our little guys going. Storm on Demand is an infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. And Luke, you are my son. No. A proprietary cloud platform that was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. It is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. You don't know the power of the Storm side. Features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Storm on Demand at stormondemand.com. Options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. So, Shield Maiden, go to Storm on Demand. Stormondemand.com. We love them. You'll love them too.
How did I become the Shield Maiden?
I don't know. we need a role for you in this commercial, and so you're
Storm on
Shield
Demand.
Maiden.
I like having to.
That's what, it's show 11.
11.
So
Show 11. There we go.
we're up in our game. Two little guys.
Well, I think we are right around closing time.
Yes.
Oh
I
my
think
goodness.
we are. That's it.
That was great. Duncan, thank you for joining us. Do you have any last minute things you would like to add?
No, I just first time on, I've really enjoyed myself, and good show, and thanks for the airtime.
Great. Well, make sure you keep us posted on anything else that you're doing. You said you're doing a panel or something coming up right away, so make sure you share those with This Week in Cloud Computing.
Thank you. Will do.
And unfortunately, Aaron's video, we can't pull him up right now, but
Yes.
we did have Aaron Levie, Box.net.
Doing great things.
Great things, and we will hopefully keep in touch with you as well, Aaron. So thank you very much for being on the show. Box.net, folks.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are. We can hear you.
Somehow we broke the video connection somehow. I apologize.
But you are there. You are speaking
We can hear you.
from the heavens and the clouds.
In the clouds.
He's in the clouds.
Oh, goodness.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. And of course, we have to thank our sponsors.
Verticore.
Verticore,
Yep.
at Storm on Demand, and at NetDNA
CDN. Yes.
There we go.
I just have to think before I say that.
NetDNA CDN. We
CDN.
just can't say that 10 times fast,
Yeah.
that's all.
So all of our videos are coming out of NetDNA.
Exactly. So thank you to our sponsors for supporting new media. We would not be able to do this
Please
without
tweet
you.
thank you to our sponsors.
Yes,
We really
thank you to our
appreciate that.
sponsors. And also, if you would like to be on the show, or if you have ideas, or if you are a conference organizer and would like to offer a discount code perhaps to This Week in Cloud Computing viewers,
That's right.
then send an email to pitch@thisweekend.com.
That's right.
Or Amanda@thisweekend.com, or we'll
Mark, you get something to
definitely read those as well. So yeah, ideas for the show. And then next week, same cloud time, same cloud channel. I'm Amanda Coolong. This is This Week in Cloud Computing.